with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Okay, again, I want to say welcome to everyone here tonight. And tonight we're going to be looking at the 15th chapter of Kings, and then also jumping over into 13, 14, 15, and 16th chapter of 2nd Chronicles. It's all the same time frame, and then that would get us through basically the reign of Abijah, who's the king of Judah. He followed Rehoboam, his father, and then after that the reign of Asa. Now Asa is known in Deep East Texas as Asa. Okay, just so you know. And but it's in Hebrew it's pronounced Asa. So anyway, are there any comments or questions that anybody has? Let me go ahead and mute everybody here now. And then if you do have anything to say, any kind of comment or anything, then just unmute yourself and just shout it out, because you're not gonna make me nervous by doing that. Okay. So here we go. Getting to our timeline, we can't do anything without a timeline, knowing where we're at. We're over here in these chapters here in 1 Kings, and basically Judah is an entity to itself. Israel again is an entity to themselves, and they're frequently fighting. And in 2nd Chronicles, we're over in this area here. And again, same kind of thing. Everybody's fighting each other all the time. Now here's what the map of the territory of Israel. And you see that actually Israel had a good bit more territory than did Judah, which is down here. And then all these areas here that used to be under Solomon and David, they have gone back to their native indigenous populations, because Rehoboam just wasn't strong enough to keep all of that together. So and I'm really going to start out right at the beginning, getting off my script. Here we are. We're going to be looking at this time frame here from about 913 BCE down through 870 BCE. So it's 43 years total that we'll be looking at. And mostly all of it actually that we're going to be looking at today, or the major part of it, is going to be concerning Judah and the relationship over here with Jeroboam, Nadab, and Baasha. All right, so everybody got a picture of where we are on that. Now, starting out with our little slice in time, where we look at the time frame that we're in, which is the Iron Age. Okay, this was called the Iron Age. And when I was a kid and I looked at, they talked about the Bronze Age and the Stone Age and the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and all of that kind of stuff. I always looked at that and I thought, oh man, that's so far away, so long ago. That was even before they had reading and writing, so it's kind of like prehistory, and then I realized that no, I mean the Exodus took place during the Bronze Age, and then here now all of this is taking place in the Iron Age. So sometimes I have to get my timeline straight. That's why I do timelines an awful lot, because I have a hard time, trying to correlate everything. So anyway, our slice in time is today. I thought we'd look at clothing. What kind of clothes did these people wear? And most of the families in the according to the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, they got a great museum. They can't count votes for beans, but they do have a good Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. Most people in the Bronze Age and the Iron Age wove their own cloth, made their own clothing. It's kind of like bread making. Remember, I talked about that last week. This was an activity that figured prominently in the daily lives of the women. The women were always working. And those ladies, you got to hand it to them. They kept civilization alive, and they probably still do. In antiquity, the southern Levant, which is this area of the Middle East, that was famous for weaving of luxurious, patterned, and colored textiles. And so the average household, weaving was a means of producing simple everyday garments. So I mean, everybody had a loom. That was one of the things that the people taught, and it was one of the things that you just had to learn, like cooking or sewing or something like that. This skill of weaving was brought down, and every family did sort of their own. So you could always tell some of the kids running around that their mothers were excellent weavers, and some of the kids maybe not so much. Their mothers were excellent weavers. So we don't particularly have that problem today, but I'm an old guy, and I can tell you that back in the day, my mother would take flour sacks, and they would come in real nice patterns of different things, and she would take these flour sacks and turn them into they were cloth or cotton, and turn them into shirts for myself and my brother, and a matching dress for my little sister. So she was a great seamstress, and so we thought we were just really, really cool folks, because me and my brother and my sister all matched. And of course, now you look at it and it says, oh, how nerdy. But back in those days, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, that was pretty cool. But that's every household did their own weaving, and these looms were warp weighted. The threads on the end of the long axis of the weave, the warp, they were suspended vertically with weights. There were weights down there that held the threads in line, and so then you'd pass the other thread, the weft is called, horizontally in and out of the warp, which were the vertical strings, and that created the weave. Now, the principal fibers that they used were sheep wool, goat hair, and flax. Of course, flax is a fibrous plant that they used to make linen. Egypt was famous for making very fine, beautiful flax linen. And in fact, when Israel left Egypt, they took with them linen from Egypt, and much of the tabernacle then was made, and all of the curtain around the tabernacle, the fence, the cloth fence around the tabernacle, was all made out of this fine linen from Egypt. And then the priest's garments were made out of an even finer linen. And so these before it could be formed into a thread, the wool had to be washed and picked clean, and then combed and straightened out, and then the fibers were spun to make them into a thread kind of a thing. And then and that was tedious stuff too. Watching some of these ladies that would do that, and it was, they're using their hands and everything. It was kind of a very, very tedious thing. Took a long time. And it was time consuming, but it was also a time for socializing, because then the ladies could get together and maybe they would help each other out. Maybe some were better spinners, others were better weavers, and some were good with dyes and so forth. So they could possibly have specialized a little bit. Now, archaeology has revealed that some here's some pictures from Egyptian things that showed these are Hebrews here. Okay, these folks here are Hebrews. These guys here are Egyptians, and then these ladies here. Whoops. All right, these people here again, they were Egyptian. They were Hebrews. How they figured that out, I don't know. Other than one thing I read says, "See the pointy chin? That means that they were Hebrews." I don't know. I just read the stuff, and sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. But you can see the ladies over here. They all had different colored, different patterned dresses, because goodness sakes, you did not want to wear a dress that your neighbor wore, the same kind of a pattern and everything. And so each one of them was individual. All right, and archaeology has revealed some information on the manner in which these people would adorn themselves. It's apparent that both men and women wore makeup and jewelry. And kohl, it's Kohl, is a black eye paint derived from antimony, and it was the most common of the cosmetic product. Now, makeup was applied by means of a stick or a small spoon, and it was stored in shallow bowls. And both men and women would wear perfumes, so would scent themselves with perfumed oils. And you talk about the eye makeup. We were in Jordan a number of years ago, and some of the people in these outlying villages, the men, I was looking at them and I said, "Wow, these guys, their eyes just pop." When you're looking at them, and then it dawned on me, well, these cats are wearing eye makeup, eyeliner, and stuff like that. And so we asked the guide about that, and he said, "Oh yeah, that has developed as kind of a way to reduce the amount of reflected light into the eye, kind of like football players put the black stuff underneath their eyes. Well, these guys would wear an eyeliner that they said helped reduce the sunlight coming, reflecting into their eyes. And I figured that Ray-Bans would probably be better, but whatever. So the clothing was also a principal indication of status in the Egyptian art. Canaanite nobles are shown wearing elaborate patterned woven clothing, and in the Iron Age, fringed garments were associated with special status. Now, elite clothing was often made multi-layered and required fasteners. They used toggle pins, and then later on in the Iron Age, they used a thing called a fibulae, and it was an ancient version of a safety pin. And so they would wear frontlets or a headband on their headband. Now, remember when God told the Israelis that He wanted them to put fringes on their garments and the tzitzit on their four-cornered garments? Well, in other countries, that was a form of royalty. But what did God call the people? He called them. He says, "You are to be a nation of kings and priests. So you are all royalty to me." And He wanted them to wear the fringes on their clothes that would normally be associated only with royalty. So let's see, where am I? Okay. I wanted to show you, there's another couple of pictures here. Now, here I just kind of highlighted what these ladies were wearing. You can see it a little bit better. And this, of course, is a later representation of clothing. that people might have worn. And again, this looks more like somebody getting ready for a Jesus play in church, but I maybe that's correct. You look down here on the one thing noting, the ladies down here, they wore kind of a moccasin thing, on their feet, whereas men wore sandals. That's just the various pictures that I saw were like that. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into our main lesson tonight. After I show you these looms, and here's a loom that they had, and here's one where a lady is actually doing that and running the threads through and all that kind of stuff. So very, very, very cool. I've seen ladies do this in various parts of the world, um, even in the Middle East, and also over here in the United States with the Navajos that making cloth that way too. And here's the little shuttle here thing that they would string the warp that going across there. All right. Any comments or questions on that? Okay. Well, so now let's go ahead with the scriptures that we're going to be looking at tonight. 1 Kings 15, 1-3. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah. He reigned reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom, and he walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him, and his heart was not wholly devoted to Adonai his God, like the heart of his father David. So what's he talking about? He had done the sins of his father being Rehoboam, and then actually it would have been his great grandfather, would have been King David. And so the Bible is just saying here that, okay, Abijah just Abijam, Abijam, that J is a kind of a sound, because we don't have a J sound in Hebrew. But he was a son of Rehoboam, and just that he was not wholly dedicated to Adonai. He had a little bit dedicated to him, because we'll see here in a little bit that he did invoke God in going to battle, but he only reigned for 3 years. So that's just one of those mysteries of why he got cut out after 3 years. Now his mother Maacah, she was a powerful force in the palace. And so she was really kind of a driving force in culture during the day, and she had to be dealt with later on. So it would get okay. And so just as a little bit more of a background, the king Abijam or Abijam, they're all pronounced or spelled in different places, different ways. He was the son of Rehoboam and the father of Asa. Now Abijah reigned for only 3 years, from 913 to 911 BC in Judah, before he died. And Abijah was a wicked king, and we've already talked about how he did all the things that his father Rehoboam did. Now he attempted to reclaim the northern 10 tribes of Israel as part of his kingdom. So he launched something up against Jeroboam, and at the same time, if he was just a new king, could be that maybe Jeroboam was also trying to test Abijah and see, if he could overthrow him. So there was a lot of that back and forth going on. So in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, and actually should have been Jeroboam, Abijah began to reign over Judah, and he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Micah. Okay, it's spelled a different way. Now, we don't know why these things were spelled a different way, but this spelling here, actually, this Micaiah, or however you would say that, the daughter of Uriah of Gibeah, that actually is a male name. Normally would have been assigned to a male, a man. That's a man's name. But it's sort of like today, you can be, a woman can be Michael, and a man is Michael. And I guess there are some other names that are the same. A couple of them come to mind would be Jordan. It could be a girl or a boy, and I'm sure I could think of another couple of three if I'd sit here and think about them a minute. But that was one of those kind of names. And so then it says there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. And Abijah went into battle with an army of valiant warriors, 400,000 men, chosen men, while Jeroboam arranged for battle against him 800,000 chosen men, mighty warriors. Now, really, all that many people? There are a number of variations here compared to what we had in First Kings. Okay, number one, the different spellings of the king's name, the names of his mother, her father, and we don't have a good explanation. So it's just the way that the different writers, even throughout Israel, sometimes they would spell things differently, and then they would also pronounce things differently, because that was one of the ways that they knew if somebody was a spy or something. They would get them to say, okay, can you say Shibboleth? And certain parts of the country, they couldn't say Shibboleth. They could only say Sibboleth. And so if you said Sibboleth instead of Shibboleth, then you were executed. All right. So now these are lots of numbers here: 400,000 troops and 800,000, and we've come across that in all of our study here. Remember when there were other times where they said that these vast numbers of troops, and I think this may be another one of those aspects that says that this maybe it was the decimal place was one off, that even then 80,000 troops against 40,000 troops, we don't know, we just don't know. And what we can accept, though, was that Jeroboam had twice as many troops as did Abijah, and so it was a 2-to-1 thing. All right. And then going ahead, Abijah stood on top of Mount Zemaraim, which is a hill in Ephraim, and said, "Listen to me, Jeroboam, and all Israel. Don't you know that Adonai, God of Israel, has given kingship over Israel to David forever, to him and his sons by a covenant of salt? Yet Jeroboam, son of Nebat, the servant of Solomon, son of David, rose up and rebelled against his master. Riffraff and scoundrels gathered around him and pressed hard on Rehoboam, son of Solomon, when Rehoboam was young and tender-hearted and could not stand up to them. So now, do you intend to oppose the kingdom of Adonai, which is in the hand of David's descendants? Are you indeed a great multitude, and with you the golden calves that Jeroboam made for you as gods? Have you not banished the Kohanim of Adonai and the sons of Aaron, as well as the Levites, and then appointed your own priests, just as the peoples of the lands do? Can whoever comes to consecrate himself with a bull and a young cow and 7 rams become a priest for gods of nothing? But as for us, Adonai is our God, and we will not forsake him. We have the sons of Aaron ministering as Kohanim to Adonai, and the Levites in their work. Every morning and every evening they burned to Adonai burnt offerings and sweet incense. They set the rows of bread on the pure table, and they light the golden menorah with its lamps burning every evening. For we keep the service of Adonai Eloheinu, and but you have forsaken him. And look, God is with us at our head, and his Kohanim with the signal trumpets to sound an alarm against you. O men of Israel, do not fight against Adonai, the God of your fathers, for you will not succeed. And so Abijah, he was surrounded, because while he was sitting up there talking, Jeroboam had his troops go all the way around this mountain. And so now Abijah was totally surrounded, and he would have had to fight his way out no matter which direction he went. And so what does he do? He kept on going, and he delivered just a blistergram to Jeroboam and all the troops there, just a really hot, scathing denouncement of Jeroboam. And he had, at this time, Abijah had kind of gone pretty far up into Israel's territory, which was, really, militarily speaking, kind of dumb, because now he's cut off. He's totally surrounded. But maybe God allowed this just so that when he did win the battle, he couldn't say that he did it on his own, but they had to admit that it was God. And so when then remember when he says there's when Jeroboam was young and tenderhearted. Well, that's baloney, because Rehoboam was 41 years old, and when he began to reign. And so the falsehood here is that it was not that the writer of Chronicles, but of Abijah, because the writer of Chronicles accurately reported the speech as it was recorded in the commentary of the prophet Iddo. So it's found in another place too. And so the big deal of this, the greater significance of all of this, is that it's a reference to the sacred religious things, regalia, that God through Moses had ordained in the Pentateuch, in the Torah, for the tabernacle, and which they had been incorporated by Solomon now into the new temple. And so it should be remembered that all of this knowledge of Torah and its contents was common public information, basically centuries before the discovery of these alleged documents of the law that you'll see later on from Josiah. And Abijah was an evil king, but the speech was made here. It was loaded with significant truth, and it's especially interested that Abijah knew nothing about the false story that these golden calves were in any manner symbols of God. They were indeed no gods, as Abijah said, and everything pertaining to the true worship of Adonai, even the priesthood and all that, had been thrown out of the country by Jeroboam. Anything and everything having to do with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had been thrown out of the northern tribes, and they were just totally pagan. And so note that Jeroboam's army they'd brought their little golden calves with them into battle. And so going ahead, comments or questions yet? Here actually is Mount Zeramaim. And so you can imagine if somebody got up there with a megaphone, hello, and spoke down here, that his voice could very well have echoed through these canyons and so forth. And you'll see here Mount Zeramaim. This is the Dead Sea. Jerusalem would be right about here someplace. Gilgal is up there, so close too. All right. So going on to 2 Chronicles 13 to 17, but Jeroboam had commanded the ambush to go around and come up come from the rear, so that while they were in front of Judah, the ambush was behind them. When Judah turned around, behold, the battle was before him and behind him. They cried out to Adonai, and the Kohanim, the priests, blew the trumpets. And then the men of Judah raised a battle cry, and as the men of Judah shouted, God struck down Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. Then men of Israel fled before Judah, and God delivered them into their hands. So Abijah and his people defeated them with a great slaughter, and 500,000 chosen men of Israel fell slain. Now, King Abijah had, he had these victories over Israel, and so Second Chronicles 13 describes this battle. That's where you find it, and he just spoke out all of these this diatribe against Jeroboam, and then he delivered really kind of one of these Joshua type statements where he said that we have not forgotten the Lord, and he he is Adonai is our God, and we have not forsaken him. So that was his battle cry going into the battle. And so basically, no matter which direction he went, there was some enemy that they could attack. And that going on, then we find that Abijah's mother, Maacah, we talked about her a minute. She was apparently, really, really powerful within the palace intrigues, and she was like the queen mother or whatever throughout Abijah's reign. Only 3 years, and into the reign of her grandson Asa. After Abijah's death, there was a peace between Israel and Judah for 10 years, and Abijah's son, King Asa, instituted wide reforms throughout Judah. One of the Asa's reforms actually was to depose his grandmama, Maacah, because of her promotion of Asherah worship, the false gods with the Asherah poles and so forth. And 2 Chronicles 14 says that Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. All right. Comments or questions? Okay. On in 1 Kings 15:9, going back into 1 Kings, in the 20th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah. He reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And now Asa did what was right in Adonai's eyes, like his father David, basically his grandfather David. He also expelled the great-grandfather David. He also expelled the male prostitutes from the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. He deposed his mother Maacah from being queen mother, put her into retirement because she had made an abominable image as an Asherah pole. So Asa cut down her image and burned it in the Kidron Valley. But they did not take away the high places. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was wholly devoted to Adonai all his days. He brought into the house of Adonai the consecrated things of his father, as well as his own consecrated things of silver, gold, and utensils. So Asa, he started things right. He had become the king of Judah in the 20th year of Jeroboam, and Asa's father Abijah, he was the one that had done evil in God's sight, and he only reigned for 3 years. Asa's grandfather Rehoboam, he had also done evil in God's sight, but somehow something happened with King Asa. He was doing things right. He instituted reform. He removed all the male shrine prostitutes, cut down Asherah poles, and even, like I said, deposed his own grandmother from her position, and because she was involved in all that worship of the Asherah. And he didn't remove all the high places. That seemed like one of the things that just seemed so tough for these kings to do, was to remove the high places, and he did not. But the Bible says his heart was fully committed to the Lord anyway. And so Judah was at peace with the surrounding nations for about 10 years during Asa's reign. And then Second Chronicles 15 describes a time when Azariah, a prophet, told Asa that if he sought the Lord, God would be with him. This encouraged Asa to go ahead, and that's what got him going to take out all of these idols and repair the altar of the temple, and so he got all the people together. They had a big sacrifice, and then he also issued a decree that, if you did not follow the one true God, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then you're going to die. You're going to be put to death. We'll kill you. And so everybody said, yeah, that's great. That sounds like a great idea. And so they were actually, had them on the right path. Now, he built fortified cities, and they had a long period of prosperity. And then they had some people come up against them. From Zerah, Zerah the Cushite, they came up to war on Judah, and the Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah, and the Cushites fled, which is quite a thing, because the Cushites were excellent mercenary warriors from down in Africa, and they were a force to be reckoned with. So, but they were beaten with such ferocity that they never did come back and mess with Israel again. So, in fact, the men of Judah then carried back a bunch of plunder from them. Okay, 1 Kings 15, 16 through 19. Now, there was a war between Asa and King Baasa of Israel all their days. So it just seemed like that all their days, or every day, the whole time that the two of them were in power, there was a war against each other. And King Baasa marched against Judah, and he built up Ramah to prevent anyone from going out or coming in to King Asa of Judah. So he blocked the roads. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasuries of Adonai's house and the treasures of the royal palace, and delivered them into the hand of his officials. King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, son of Tabrimon, son of Hezion, king of Aram, who resided in Damascus. I mean, so he's given all this stuff to the enemy, saying, let there be a treaty between me and you as it was between my father and your father. I have just sent you a present of silver and gold. Go break your treaty with King Baasa of Israel, so that he may withdraw from me. So, and that's what he did. He went out, and then he started attacking some of Israel's assets, and that then made Baasa back off, because he had to go and then and fight against Ben-Hadad, and so he couldn't fight against Asa. And so, unfortunately, though, during this time, Asa made some mistakes. Now, can you think of what one of the mistakes would have been? That he sent all of the gold and silver out of the temple, and his own gold and silver, and he took it to Ben-Hadad and said, if you'll be, let me buy you off, is basically what he was doing. And so Ben-Hadad did exactly that, did not double cross him. And so then that way they were able to take all the fortifications that had been put into building around Ramah, that they took all of that and they built up Geba and Mizpah. And so, but the problem with that is that this treaty was not approved by God. Okay, they did not run it by him first, and so God sent this seer named Hanani, and he came to King Asa of Judah, and he said to him, "Because you've depended on the king of Aram, and not depended on Adonai your God, therefore the army of the king of Aram has escaped out of your hand." Where were not the Cushites and the Libyans, a mighty army with many chariots and horsemen? Yet because you relied on Adonai, he delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of Adonai range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose heart keeps covenant with them. You have acted foolishly in this manner. Indeed, from now on, you will have wars. Then Asa was angry with the seer. He was going to, shooting the messenger, and put him in the prison, for he was enraged at him. Also, Asa oppressed some of the people at the same time. Behold, the acts of Asa from beginning to end are written in the book of Kings of Judah and Israel. All right. So Hanani, the seer, he visited Asa, reminded him of the way that God had protected him and conquered the Cushites, and then he chastised him for relying on Ben-Hadad instead of relying on God. And so, but rather than repent of his sin, if this had been David, David would have put his, he'd put his face down to the ground and would say, I have sinned against my God. He would admit that. But his great grandson, not so much. And he didn't repent. He didn't bend. He didn't bow. He didn't break. He just said, no, that's not, was not my, that was not a mistake. So, basically for the rest of his time, he had war. Now, in 2 Chronicles 16, so now in the 39th year of his reign, Asa became diseased in his feet. His illness was severe, yet even in his disease he did not seek Adonai, but physicians. Finally, Asa slept with his fathers, dying in the 41st year of his reign. He was buried in his own tomb, which he had hewn out for himself in the city of David. They laid him in his resting place, which was filled with sweet spices and various blends of perfumes. They made a very large fire for him. Okay, so this was like 3 years later after he had defeated Asa, and he got this severe foot disease. We don't know what it was. It could have been like gout, or it could have been, maybe diabetes, where your feet, you get neuropathy, and your feet start to basically they just start to rot. You get gangrene, and because there's no blood flow down there into your toes. And so even then, he didn't ask God to forgive him or help him or anything like that. He went to the physicians for help. And so then 2 years later, in the 41st year of his reign, Asa died, and he was buried with great honor. So despite a less than ideal end to his reign, the Bible does record that he's considered a godly and good king. His son Jehoshaphat succeeded him and ruled for 25 years. Now, Jehoshaphat was also a godly ruler, following in his father's footsteps and seeking the Lord. Yet he also made some foolish alliances. We'll be talking about those in the coming weeks with those who did not follow the Lord. And the life of King Asa is an example to all of us as to how easy it is to kind of drift away from the Lord. And so Asa began his reign with a strong commitment to God, but as years went by, his dedication kind of waned and faltered and just brought on to himself unnecessary trouble. And this is one of the reasons that Yeshua told one of the seven churches of, I think it was Ephesus, in the book of Revelation, he said, "You have forgotten your first love." And so he's wanting them to come back to the fold. All right, that is all of it for tonight.